Mental Health Month, and we're talking about different things that deal with mental health. And the Bible has a lot to say about mental health and how to take care of it and what to do about it. This week, it's When It Hurts. Next week, to match with the renewing of the vows, will be renewing, starting over. I remember one time, I don't want to get into the sermon yet, remember one time I asked my dad, I said, how many times can a man start over? Many times as it takes, he says. So true. And so, starting over or renewing will be next week. This week, when it hurts, we read in Genesis chapter 21, verses 19 through 17, a disturbing story. A little background first. Hagar was a handmaiden or a slave to Sarah. And Sarah and Abraham were promised a son, and one or the other was not working right, and Sarah never got pregnant. Can't have a son if you don't get pregnant. Finally, Sarah came up with a solution which was contrary to what God said. God said Sarah would have a son, and he promised her that. And if God promises something, he always delivers. But we as humans think we can help God out. We think we can help him with his cause. And so Sarah came up with a solution and said, it's our custom that you can have a baby through my slave, and it's mine. I'm paraphrasing. It's mine. And that's how God will reward us and give us a son. Abraham listened, went to Hagar. She became pregnant, and she did bear him a son, Ishmael. God said, that's not the one. It's not the one. That wasn't my plan. That's not my will. And so many troubles come when we try to go ahead of God or try to work it out on our own. A lot of pain and a lot of heartache. This heartache would have never happened, by the way, that we're going to talk about. This broken heart would have never happened if Abraham had just been man enough to say, no, this is not how God wants it. This is not God's promise. But Abraham gave in. Later, years later, I think Ishmael was 10 to 12 years old. So 10 to 12 years later, Sarah becomes pregnant. Just like God said. Surprise, right? And Sarah has a baby. And they name the baby Isaac. And Abraham and Sarah are happy, except for there's an issue, isn't there? What do we do with Hagar and Ishmael? What do we do with them? Sarah comes up with a plan. Sarah says, get rid of them. Again, Abraham not being man enough to say, no, this is not how we deal with things. Created heartache and pain that didn't need to be there. What had Hagar done? Wrong? Nothing. What did Ishmael do wrong? Absolutely nothing. He just existed. One of the strangest things, I'm getting off on a rabbit hole a little bit here. One of the strangest things I've found in life is that some people won't like you just because you exist. It has nothing to do with anything except you're there. I've had it happen to me. I've had people not like me just because I'm alive. And here's Ishmael. He had done nothing but exist. But he was a threat. Sarah was jealous. And the threat was maybe Ishmael will get all the promises of God and not Isaac, her son. Now, she created this problem. And she created this heartache, her and Abraham. Hagar had not. Ishmael had not. But they're the ones who are going to suffer through it. And so, Sarah comes up with a plan and says, kick them out of the camp. Send them out into the desert. Basically, sends them on their way to die. What an awful story. They get a little bit of ration of food and drink, and they send them off. Abraham does it. And Hagar and Ishmael are walking and traveling and trying and searching. Can you imagine the hurt and the pain in Hagar's heart? Here she thought she had a nice home, a nice situation, a nice family. Her son was the son of the leader of the camp. And now nothing. In one moment's time, because of the jealousy of a woman, because of the threat of her son, she lost everything. The heartache and the pain that she was going through for her son, who was now abandoned by his father, given up, disowned. And she was in pain. And so was Ishmael. And the hurt that she was feeling in this story, in this the example that we're given in the Bible. And it just reminds us that in life, we can be totally innocent and still get our hearts broken. We can still have pain and it hurts. I have troubles with super Christians who say they've never had their heart broken, that say they've never been depressed, that they've never had troubles. My question is, do you just stay at home all day? Whenever you have any kind of relationship with any people, even at work, you will have troubles, you will have pain, you will have heartache. It's part of life. Life sometimes hurts. Who hasn't hurt and suffered over the sickness of a child and you can do nothing about? And there they are, they're sick. And you don't know the future of that child and the heartache and the pain that comes with that. Or who hasn't suffered the heartache of a separation in a relationship? You've been married for years and one leaves. You've been dating for a while and the one says, I'm done. Who hasn't suffered the heartache and the hurt of when a child says, you're no longer my parent. I don't want to have anything to do with you. And they're gone. Who hasn't suffered the heartache and the pain and the hurt of when a child dies? And the hurt that comes with that. We have hurt. And as a church, we can't ignore that people are hurting. I have a friend, some of you know him, some of you have met him. His name is Dave McKnight. His son struggled with heroin for years. They sent him to rehab. He went to rehab. He came back early. The very day, it was in a few hours of him coming back from rehab, he OD'd on heroin and died. He finds his own son in a chair with a needle in his arm. Imagine the hurt and the pain that comes with that. And the tears. And as a church, do we know how to deal with that? Do we know as an individual how to deal with that? Do we know how to help those people that are hurting? Many times you hear, and it's true. By the way, I won't take super long, I promise. But you hear a lot that say about a church it should be a hospital. And it's true. We come to church on Sundays and none of us are perfect. And some of us are hurting. And some of us are in pain. And some of us have hurt others. And so we're dealing with guilt. And we come so we can be healed of those things. And God can heal all your hurt. If you don't get anything else in this sermon, get point number 1. Get point number 1. Let's read. There's 4 points. I left them blank so you could write them out. I'm experimenting a little. I'm trying to go back and forth. I don't know if I like the writing part. Let me know if you do. Some people might, some may not. At least you got a pen in your hand and you can take notes and you can ask questions later or something. But number 1, we find in Matthew chapter 10, verses 29 through 31, when it hurts, some things to remember, some things to rely on, some things to go to. Now, these 4 things are from my heart. This is what helped me. I've been through hurt. I've been through pain. I've been through confusion. I've been through where you don't know what to do. I know what it's like to hurt. And these 4 things help me. I hope maybe they help you. Matthew chapter 10, verses 29 through 31. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a farthing? And one of them shall not fall on the ground without your Father. He's saying, I'm just going to really go out there. I know when a bird dies. I mean, this bird doesn't cost a whole lot. It's not of much value. It's not of much worth. Not too many people are going to eat a sparrow. If you're hungry, you want a turkey, you want a chicken, you want that kind of bird, not a sparrow. It doesn't cost a whole lot. Matter of fact, some birds, back in Chicago, we used to call them rats with wings. They're just not of much value. But God says they have not much value, but I know when one dies. Isn't that amazing? That our God is that involved in nature and in life. He knows when a bird dies. Says, I know when one dies, but the very hairs of your head are numbered. He says, I know how many hairs you got on your head. And always the joke is some of us have less now than we had before, and God doesn't have to count as much. I don't know what that means. I'm fine with my hair. By the way, I never remember I'm going bald or I'm balding, but it's always children that remind me. Thank you very much. Thank you. I forgot all about that, or I didn't know. Justin's very apt to let me know I'm bald. He calls me fat and bald all the time. Fear ye not. Don't be afraid. Therefore, you are more value than many sparrows. Don't be concerned. Don't worry. And this point 1, God knows you and He values you. You are valuable to God. That's your first point. Write it down. If you don't remember anything else today, anything else I said, anything else that's been done, remember this: God knows you and you're valuable to Him. I mean, we can go straight to it. How valuable are you? He sent His Son to die for you, to shed His blood so you can be saved and go to heaven and live with Him forever. That's how valuable you are to Him. I love all of you, but I am not going to let my son die for you. I love my son more. I'm just being honest. If there's a burning building and one of you are in the building and my son, well, good luck. Because who am I going to rescue first? My son. That's just human nature. But God says, beyond that, I am beyond human nature. I love you so much, I'm willing to sacrifice my own son. That's how valuable you are to me. I know everything about you. I know how many hairs you have on your head. I know what you said. I know every tear. I know what breaks your heart. I know what has broken your heart, He says. I know what you cry about at night. I know you. I know. And you are valuable to me. You are valuable to God. You have value in the eyes of God. Maybe the world doesn't see you as valuable. Maybe the world doesn't care. Maybe there are family members. Maybe you've lost family members and they don't care. They've abandoned you. God has not and never will. Because you have value to God. God knows you and He values you. Trust me, in those moments in darkness when you're alone and you're needing something, that means something. It really does. God, you know me. God, you love me. God, my life has value to you. And you know I'm hurting. And you know the brokenness that I have. Thank God you're that involved in my life. You know me. Number 2. Get your pens ready. Proverbs 15:3. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. God knows you and He values you. God sees every hurt that happens to you. God sees every hurt that happens to you. Nothing escapes His vision. He sees all. He knows all. He knows your hurt. He knows what was said. He knows what was done. He knows. He sees it. We'll get to Hagar at the end, and we'll see what God does about these things. See, sometimes we forget and we try to say, God, did you see what just happened? Didn't you see? God, did you see this? He sees it all. He knows it all. You're not alone. Ladies and gentlemen, you're not alone. God sees it. So God knows and He values you. God sees every hurt that happens to you. Number 3, Psalm 31. Psalm 34, I'm sorry. The eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, and He hears, and His ears are open unto their cry. I got ahead of myself. And His ears are open unto their cry. God hears you. God hears you. So listen, God knows. He values. He saw it. He saw it. And when you cry out to Him with your tears, with your heartache, I don't know about you, have you ever been so heartbroken, all you can just say is God? I've been there. I don't know, I just can't get any other words out, but God. He hears that. He hears it. Other peoples may not hear you. Others may ignore you. I mean, one day we were at work and some girl was crying and I said, don't do that. I said, don't cry around guys because we don't know what to do with that. When a woman cries, we don't know what to do. God does. He hears that cry. Don't think He's ignoring you. Don't think He doesn't hear it. He does. He values you. So therefore, He values your words. See, that's one of the ways you know somebody loves you, is how much value they put in your words. God hears that cry. He hears that prayer. So God knows and values you. God sees every hurt. God hears you. God hears you. Could spend an hour on that one. I'm serious. And then the last one. Psalm 34, verse 7. I will be glad and rejoice in thy mercy, for thou hast considered my trouble. Thou hast known my soul in its adversaries. God is paying attention to your every hurt. God is paying attention to your every hurt. He's considered it. He knows it. He's going to do something. Listen, I'm a father. Do you think I'm going to let people get by with hurting my children? No. I'm not going to let it happen. Now, I may have to wait for the right time, say the right words. Sometimes I may even have to, as a human, I have to wait till I calm down. You ever been there? I'm going to deal with this, but not right now because I'm angry. I don't know about you. I don't do well when I'm angry. I do stupid things. I say stupid things and I do stupid things. So it's better if I walk off, get away from it, and then come back. But if I'm a human father, and I'm not going to let anybody hurt my children and get by with it, what about my God? What about my Heavenly Father? Listen, He knows and He values you. He sees it. He hears your cry. He's paying attention to it. He's not going to let it happen. He's going to fix that hurt. I promise you that. I can promise you just like God promises you. He will fix that. You cry to Him, you pray to Him, He hears it. He's paying attention. Nothing gets past Him, and He's going to fix it. Your Father will fix it. God is always aware of you. He's always aware. You know, human fathers are not always aware. When they were teenagers, they would go drive off to work. I assume they went to work a lot of time. I did. You know, you're not aware of everything. If my dad knew everything, he's here, I shouldn't say that. They're not totally aware of everything. But my God is. He's always aware of you. You may feel lonely and abandoned. But God says, you are not. He is aware of your hurts and your troubles. He sees what you're going through. And He knows how you feel. He knows what you're feeling. God is paying attention to your hurt. You're not abandoned. Let's talk about Hagar. We go to Genesis 21 and verse 17. And it says that in the story, her and Ishmael run out of food and water, and they're marching on, and they're going to die. And of course, Hagar cries out to God. Ishmael cries out to God. And I love these verses. Genesis 21, verse 17. And God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of God called to Hagar out of the heaven, and said unto her, What aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not. Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. God had heard the voice of the lad. There are no greater words. You can put these down on this line, the 2 lines I put, okay? I want you to remember this. There are no greater words to the heart of the miserable than, fear not, God has heard your voice. If you're in pain, you're hurting, you're miserable, you're suffering, you cry out to God, fear not, God has heard your voice. And Hagar and Ishmael was saved by God. He provided them water. They go forward. And Ishmael actually becomes a great man. There's a whole religion based on Ishmael, a false religion called Muslim or Islam. There's nations made out of Ishmael, the Arabs. He survived. He went on. God provided. And the hurt and the pain went away. There are no greater words than, fear not, God has heard your voice. The tears of the hopeless were seen, and the groans of the misery were heard. God at that moment rescued them, for He sent an angel to open Hagar's eyes to see a well of water, and she and her son were saved. Hagar's story is encouragement for those who are hurting. You who are helpless and hopeless, be aware that your God is aware of you. Fear not. You may cry in the night, lose your sleep. Your God sees those tears, and He hears those cries. And He will take away that hurt. Let us close.